Welcome to
4Kids Flashback. Hello, welcome to 4Kids Flashback. I am one of your hosts. My name is Tara Sands, and the other of the hosts, I shouldn't speak for a living, is
Steve Yurko, which is funny. I was gonna, if you're gonna leave it up to me to give myself a little epithet there, I was gonna say, and the other one.
The other one. But he was about to take a sip of his coffee when I paused for him to. So, do you want to sip it now? Okay, take a big gulp of that coffee.
Yeah, I'm gonna need
How do you take it, Steve?
And half of the time black. These days, I don't know. I think maybe because it's like the healthiest. I don't know.
Is it? I guess I'm not a coffee drinker. I drink other kinds of crap, but I guess black is the purest form of it.
Yeah,
so.
There's no syrup or anything in there. I think like one time I ordered from McDonald's and I just wanted a nice coffee, but I just wanted it no sugar and all that, and I felt like I broke the system.
They were like, "What do you do?"
Yeah, like
call Ronald.
You don't
do they
want
call Ronald
like,
McDonald
any
in
pumps?
that case?
I don't know. He's just a figurehead at this point now.
I like to think he's running things. Yeah, I'm not a clown fan. There are some clowns in One Piece, I believe, right? There is a clown character.
Yeah, very famous one. Yeah, to say.
Is he a scary clown or a good clown?
He's like a kind of like a midlife crisis clown, really.
Oh,
he's like I think in the age of like edgy jokers, I would say like in like a post like Heath Ledger Joker world, I think everyone's ready to be like, oh, let's do the
oh
the
yeah,
clown, but I don't know, he's he's going through a lot of problems trying to find
he's got issues. All right,
for sure.
I will watch it at some point, I swear. So I just want to thank anyone who's been listening to the show and supporting the show on Patreon. We really appreciate that. It's patreon.com/4kidsflashback. Or you can listen. If you do that, you can listen early and ad-free. Or you can just, what are the other options for listening?
You could just head to our website. It's so simple. It's 4kidsflashback.com with the number 4. Don't forget that. Don't ever forget that. And we got, you can listen to it there and wherever you like to listen to podcasts, like Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We got it all listed on the site.
I realize the reason I really hammer home that number 4 and not the letters is because on when I was setting up some of the accounts, like on Instagram, you couldn't use the number 4 in it. So I had to spell it out.
Oh, yeah.
As the
so
name.
that's why.
So that's why, like, sometimes you might end up seeing it spelled out, but don't you do that. That was just for me to be able to set up the account. Yeah, like Facebook wouldn't let me be my name be 4. So I had to spell it. It's a little behind the scenes.
As long as the numbers are after your name, I guess.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, so our guest today is someone who was a writer at 4Kids. I will go into way more detail because the list of shows he worked on is very long. But Barton Bishop is going to be interviewed momentarily, starting now. Our guest today is Barton Bishop. He worked at 4Kids as a senior show writer from 2003 to 2012, working on a lot of shows there, including Yu-Gi-Oh!, a bunch of versions of Yu-Gi-Oh!, Shaman King, Winx Club, Pokémon Chronicles, Sonic X, Mew Mew Power, and Magical Do-Re-Mi. Welcome to 4Kids Flashback. Barton, it's so nice to see you.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Tara.
So we'll give a little backstory for people who want to know how you got the job at 4Kids in the first place.
I was at NYU for grad school in the illustrious 7th floor. We refer to dramatic writing department of Tisch. I actually started it's kind of I moved to New York like on September 10th, 2001, I think. I don't remember the
Oh
exact
my
date, but
gosh.
the first day of classes was September 11th,
Wow.
and we got off the train. I remember and being like, I'm just like from a little small town in Florida, and I was, walking down the street and people were saying the news, and I'm thinking, boy, New York really is as
Wow.
crazy as they said it was going to be. It took a while to realize it was an out of the ordinary situation. Um,
Especially being downtown there. You
yeah,
were you were pretty far downtown at
yeah, it was
NYU.
right there,
Yeah.
and it was that was a surreal day. It was a whole surreal like first semester because there was a lot of okay, now we have to just pick up and pretend to focus on our silly little screenplays and things we were working
Well,
on.
and your poor parents
Oh
who
yeah,
sent you off to school in the big city and were like, "Oh my God,
my
day one,
my
no."
father like immortalized those emails for a long time of the day of.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but I went to grad school there, and one of my professors was my focus was on playwriting and screenwriting, and uh, I had the great pleasure of having Charlie Rubin as a professor who'd done a lot of animation
Yes,
work.
you're the second person who took his courses and ended up at
Yeah,
Four Kids. I
was it
love
Sam
that.
or Matt?
It was
Yeah,
Matt. No, wait. Let me remember. Yes, it was Matt
yeah,
Hurdig.
Dirtic.
Yes.
Yeah, I took his class, and he I had worked with Alan Kingsburg in the past. I think it was as far as I know, Alan reached out to him and said, I got a staff for a new property we're going to jump on. It's called Shaman King. Um, and had a spec for I had written a spec in Charlie's class for there was an animated show at the time called the Jackie Chan Adventures.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh
I
yeah.
had done a spec script for that, and he showed that to Alan. Alan said, "Do you want to come in and um, take a crack at basically, here's like a 5 minute snippet. Do you want to try, take a swing at it?" And I did that, and it was kind of off to the races. I actually did my first script for that like the week of graduation. So I was very, and I still like I'm like I was super lucky to just make a smooth transition.
Wow.
Super fortunate.
That's so interesting. Was so animation was on your radar as something you wanted to write. Was that encouraged in a dramatic? I always think of Tisch and NYU as so
Mhm.
serious and like dramatic writing program. Were they like, yeah, write a
No,
cartoon?
they were pretty encouraged. Most of the professors were pretty encouraging of it because it was very much
That's
there
awesome.
was a lot of like there's what you want to write for yourself, and when they're paying you to write, you write what they need you to write, and that kind of sort of they encourage the hustle as much as they encourage the embrace your art sort of thing. In fact, we had one professor who used to um it depends on who you ask. I loved him. Charlie Papura was his name. He passed away quite a while ago, but he was very he would look at everything through a very commercial lens. You'd be doing a pitch and working on it, and he would be like, he'd sit there and chomp on his cigar and be like, I don't think there's a market for that. You know, you gotta add a bit. Don't kill dogs. Don't kill a dog in your screenplay. What are you doing? No one's gonna see that. Like he was very. I not just to be clear, I was not like murdering dogs left and right, and I love dogs. Uh, I just remember he would always. That was for some reason that was one of those weird little aphorisms he would
That's so
come back
funny.
to.
Well, and I love that too because I feel like not enough people learn the business of this business when they're
Yeah,
studying. So it sounds like you had someone who was like, take every job, do this.
yeah.
I remember even acting on this anime stuff. Friends going, why are you doing that? Don't you want to do theater? Don't you? I was like, listen, it pays the bills. It's
I
yeah.
did get a lot of that. In fact, I was still working on plays and stuff like for quite a while. I don't do it as much anymore. I just kind of drifted. But and I remember giving a play to a friend and saying, thoughts, notes, and his main thing was, I think you've been working on anime too long. And I was
Oh,
like,
interesting.
whoa,
Okay.
okay, I see. Uh,
Huh. All
it
right.
was
He had because probably he had that planted in his head
I,
before he even
I
read
don't
it.
know. I don't know. But
Yeah. Who knows?
there was a little bit of a snobbery there sometimes. But yeah, it is what it is.
And now it's bigger than
It's
anime is
huge.
bigger than
It's
it's ever
huge.
been. And yeah, my friends were like, we should have done that when we had the chance. Yeah.
It's yeah, and I remember it was that there was when I first sort of was doing it, people were like, "Huh, okay." So like the cards, like where they duel with cards, like you're gonna sit around and I activate my trap card. Like I'm like, all right. But
Yep, I am.
I and it was one of those things where I thought, oh, this will hold down the fort for a year or so. And then, 500 episodes later, it was
Wow.
uh,
So were
um
you aware? I mean, were you into anime before you started working there, or no? Did you know anything about it really?
I would say I was it's it's such a journey, right? Because like when I was growing up and when I was like in middle school, anime was a mysterious thing. Certainly wasn't on TV. It was
Hmm.
sometimes it had its own section at the video store, and that was where all the really bloody violent stuff was. So it was like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, Ninja Scroll, Vampire Hunter D, Akira. Like we're gonna watch
Uh-huh.
this after the parents go to bed, and like it's gonna be really bloody and exciting. Um, like that was my general sort of. I missed like the initial sort of first wave of like Sailor Moon and that kind of thing. I wasn't really. It just wasn't on my radar at the time. Like so I kind of hopped from and I was into like Evangelion. So I remember someone recommending that one, and I
Okay.
absolutely loved that. Um, Chobits, I think, like was
You seem to have had more of an education about it than the other people we've spoken to who started working at 4Kids. So that's
yeah,
nice to hear.
yeah. It was we because we did. I certainly remember many nights of renting those, and you felt like you were doing something sneaky, like right under your parents' nose, because they were like, "Oh yeah, sure, cartoon."
Anime
hmm
was naughty.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So you go to your interview at 4Kids. Were they already on that in that 23rd Street building at that time?
They were. Yeah, went there and I think they had at this point I think they had produced 2 episodes of Shaman King, and I took a swing at I don't remember exactly which one, but I know that the first one I was brought on to do, and it was like we'll see how it goes, we'll do one and build from there. It was episode 6, and I still remember that.
Okay.
One episode
Oh, I gotta find it.
106, Shaman King. Um, and that was the first one I did, and then it went pretty well. Alan was great, very supportive, gave lots of really thorough notes, and we just kind of kept back and forthing. And then before I knew it, it was like, okay, they get you a desk here, and they gave me a little cubicle, and um, I got into a turning out one a week kind of a thing.
So when you first were given the assignment, I'm assuming they gave you like a VHS tape and you had to sit and
Oh
press
yes,
play and pause and rewind. And what did you think of that
that's
process?
how we used to do it for a while. Play and pause and rewind, and it was fine. It was just a little, tedious. Like
Yes.
rewind, play. I also used to, because I've done work with Bang Zoom as well back when,
Oh, okay.
and they would for a while they would like send VHS tapes like in a post like in a one of those brown mailers and
Oh,
like pop
yeah.
it to the
What shows did
VCR.
you work on for them?
Let me think.
I'm sure people will want to know because there's going to be some anime fans
Sure.
listening.
A lot of this was still in the sort of like straight to, they were doing a lot of the straight to DVD stuff. So one I remember was a Togazoshi. It was an interesting samurai sort of story. Like the
Oh,
first part was set in feudal Japan, and the second part is the reincarnations of the characters in modern Tokyo or Kyoto. I think it might have been Kyoto actually. It was a long time ago. Forgive me, fans.
yeah.
I don't
No,
remember.
it's okay.
Did a couple of you know, uh naughty stuff. Adult
That's what was around. Yeah.
adult type stuff. Did worked on Gurren Lagann with the drills.
Oh, okay.
I think that was the first one that
Cool.
was, if I'm remembering right, that was on like adults. They were putting on Adult Swim or something.
Cool. So, okay, so your
Sorry, yeah.
first assignments at no, it's okay. I'm gonna get myself back on track because I diverted the conversation. So your first assignment is Shaman King, which we've heard from some of the producers at 4Kids was the Japanese team was a little bit more involved with that show, making sure that they approved all the changes. What was your experience with adapting it and making it age appropriate and also appropriate for an American audience?
So like I personally didn't have a lot of interaction with the I don't know if it's right to call them the client in that sense, but I didn't have a lot of
Hmm.
interaction. It would all come through Alan, who's the producer on it. So anything that was being communicated was either filtered through him or Jim alone. Um,
Right.
it was it was interesting because it's like a show about death, right? Like the whole concept is pairing with the ghost
Yeah.
um it, so that part was interesting. I remember having to navigate some of that stuff. Um, we kept a lot of the like core terms because they were just great, like Furioku and the Oversoul, and like we sort of. I remember we tried to resist the temptation to kind of give it a buzzy, a more I don't know what to call it, a more sort of Saturday morning name. Like we were like, no,
Hmm.
Oversoul's cool. I say that and I'm suddenly wondering if we actually did stick with Oversoul. I'm actually
You
thinking,
did.
did we?
You did.
I think so. Yeah.
I can't remember if
Yeah.
we did that or
I can remember some things that were kind of changed or kind of more like localized and stuff like
yeah.
that. No, Oversoul.
Where,
It's good.
where it got where I remember it getting really hard was with a group um that was called the X Laws. And they were a very fanatic religious group essentially. A lot of their summon their spirits that they were bonded to were sort of um, the kind of anime thing where they will reference like Christian mythology, and so they were all these
Right.
archangels of Michael, and they followed around a young girl named Jean who spends all her time in an Iron Maiden like made of thorny vines that are like causing her great
Huh.
pain all the time, and she's constantly bleeding from the thing, and
Oof.
it's that was tough to write about that stuff
Yeah.
and navigate it in a way that obviously would they mourning because that was the people. I remember there was always the 4Kids does this and changes this, but it really was coming from the network a lot of, from in my at
Oh,
least in my
yeah, of
memory, a lot of it
course.
was coming from Kids Foxbox and Kids WB and whatever.
Yeah, there were just universal rules about what you could and couldn't do. Were you aware of that kind of backlash at the time? Because I certainly wasn't as an actor. And then I found out like a couple of years ago that people were
I
angry.
got I got aware of it a little into it. I mean, I at first to me it was just so great to be doing it. Um, for a reason we can put a pin into it, but because I want to answer the question. Yeah,
Oh,
where I learned about it most was when our episode started airing, and I couldn't help but I was young and excited, and I couldn't help but get curious and
yeah.
start. The internet was new, like we weren't yet at Internet 2.0 yet, but there was still plenty of fan forums and things, and then I went, oh, oh, you know, they they're not happy with what we've done. Some of these people, this is
Right.
upsetting.
And some of it was just name
Yeah.
changes. Like, I mean, things like that. Like, it's so interesting. We went back and did Shaman King. There's a new version of
Hmm.
Shaman King that I worked on Netflix. And they reverted, even though they used a lot of the same cast and everything, they went back to more of the original names.
Hmm.
Like, Morty is not Morty anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I always wonder, like, those conversations with the Japanese team, like, no, Morty's the perfect. You know what I mean? I just wonder, like, I wish we could have had video of those decisions or those
Right.
meetings.
Right.
It's but it's a long time ago.
It's, it is. I remember the rationale for that being that Morty is being pulled from like mort like death like the morta.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh,
so
see,
it was like a fun spin on uh I don't know if it's
okay.
the
I
Latin
I
never thought.
love
version.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
I feel like half the time people like see these like saw those name changes, thought, oh, they just took the first letter and just came up with a
I mean,
name. But
I don't know. Sometimes maybe.
no,
I
but
don't know. No, no, that can't just be a coincidence. That feels
No,
very.
that
yeah,
one I do remember,
Yeah.
like that being like an actual
Mm-hmm.
chatting about it with I think it was Jim Malone. Um,
yeah, that would make people feel better who maybe would have criticized it. Like, I think
but
they just never got, because again, you're right, the internet wasn't there. So if they would have tweeted, "Why did you change his name to Morty?" You could have said, "Actually, look at the derivation of Mort," and like, but that wasn't available to us back
right,
then.
right. Yeah, the feedback loops weren't as um sort of insta as they are now for sure.
for better and for worse.
Yeah.
Hey, Tara here. Just want to let you guys know that Steve and I will both be heading to some conventions near you, hopefully soon. Steve will be at Anime Expo in Los Angeles, July 4th weekend. He'll have a booth there, so go say hi. He'll also be at Anime NYC, August 23rd through 25th. If you want to come say hi to me, I will be at Tokyo X, June 15th and 16th in Houston, Texas. Anime El Paso, June 22nd, 23rd in El Paso. HypeCon in San Francisco, June 29th. The Long Island TCG Show, July 14th. Heroes Hideout in Albany, New York, September 28th. And we'll both be adding new stuff soon. You can also head to our social media accounts for more of this information. I'm at Tara Sands VO. Steve is at Steve Yurko. And I hope to meet you in person soon.
If you love anime and D&D, check out Warlock. It's the story of me, Nova Ravenwood, a young woman born without magic who forms a pact with a mysterious being for power. Set in a fantasy world of adventure, dragons, and powerful sorcerers, the story unfolds like an anime for your ears.
And don't forget about our muscular hunk of a classmate, me, Ren. Too bad this is audio only, otherwise you could see that I'm flexing my arms off over here.
Are you seriously interrupting the ad? You moron! Sorry, we'll get out of your way.
Wait, hang on. I haven't even told them about my amazing powers. I guess I should describe myself a little bit more first. First thing, I don't wear a shirt.
Thanks, Briar! Join the quest and listen to Warlock wherever you get your podcasts, or visit warlockpod.com for more information.
Hey guys, Tara Sands jumping in here. As some of you might have heard, one of our friends and castmates, Rachel Lillis, is dealing with some really tough health issues right now. You know her best from playing Jessie and Misty on Pokémon. You can head to her GoFundMe page and search for Rachel, spelled Rachael, Lillis, Lillis, and donate there. Another option is the cast is selling some of our autographs. You can go to ebay.com/USR/flashback4kids, or you can find a link to that in the episode notes or over at my Instagram page. That's at Tara Sands VO. We are going to do all we can to help her. We'll be adding new items soon. So we appreciate your support. If you are enjoying the show, we always appreciate a subscribe, rate, and review, especially in Apple Podcasts. A 5-star review helps people find the show and makes us feel good, frankly. But if you just hate commercials, you don't want to hear stuff like this, you can go to patreon.com/4kidsflashback and sign up over there for $5 a month. And you'll also get access to our Discord channel where we are solving lots of mysteries, and there's some great conversations happening. And you'll also get episodes a week early. So guys, thank you for listening. We really appreciate you. Bye.
There's one, the one that was really borderline that I don't fully. It's one of those things where when I talk about it now, I can't tell if I've mythologized it or not, because memory's funny that way, right? But I do know, I can recall sitting in an office with David Sartorius and Ted Lewis. We shared a writer's room, and John Toohey occasionally would come in. And either we had been sent a flash drive with the video file on it, or we just found it on a forum. I honestly don't remember which it was. I think the flash drive, but I don't remember. Either way, it was someone had made a flash cartoon of Tao Ren from Shaman King walking down a hall and approaching a door that said 4Kids Writers Room, and then walking into the room and then chopping all the heads off of the little stick figures that were sitting at the table.
That had to feel terrible. I'm so sorry, but it's funny now. But
it's hysterical.
My God.
Oh, we were laughing then.
And they got your likeness down to a T as well.
They really did.
Those stick figures. Wow.
Wow.
I was like, it is true. I do look like an orange on a toothpick. Like that.
That is crazy.
It was.
I love that. See, you do remember that. Okay.
It was both funny and do you know the Mitchell and Webb skit? Are we the baddies? Because it was sort of that moment of. It was sort of that like feeling of like, wait, is this bad? Like, are we being I don't know.
To provide a little bit of context, I remember being on a forum for a website called ShamanKingUncensored.com. So I
He was
like
that kid.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
You
I
watched
think-
the video, probably.
Speaking of like, no, I'd never seen this.
Made
That's
it.
why I thought you might have been alluding to something else. I didn't. You got me. No, I think I just remember. If I can distinctly remember anything, I was just like, why did they make Tao Len, the Chinese character, British? in the show? That was like the one thing that threw me off so much.
It's I don't know. I think
I'm not looking for the answer to that question.
No,
it's,
I think
it's
about
so
I think
fascinating, yeah.
about it a lot because we why would we of course Joe, everyone loves to joke about Joey with his Brooklyn accent on Yu-Gi-Oh, on the original Yu-Gi-Oh, and I think it was just this effort to say we're doing what we, being the larger we, not necessarily, which is to try to make voices as distinct as possible and to try to make the
That's
characters pop and be memorable. I don't know, because I'm really embarrassed to admit that in years of adapting anime, I never really picked up much, just because my job was to kind of tune it out and focus on adapting it and going off the
Right.
transliteration. So I didn't. So I would imagine there are certainly certain characters with dialects rougher than others, and I don't know the language enough to be able to assert that. But I think we were trying to do the same thing of saying, okay, well, this kid is he comes from a place of whereas Yo is not necessarily. He's very relaxed and laid back and kind of an everyday kid. This other character is meant to be from a sort of legacy family with a lot riding on them. And so, of course,
Right.
when you have to communicate as quickly as you can, like who a character is and establish them, these are sort of some of the archetypes that we're leaned into. I mean, Rio, right? Like we went ahead and we were like, oh, his name's Rio. Well, I know it wasn't Rio in the Japanese, but
Right.
but we leaned into it. We're like, all right, we're going all the way with this guy. He had that Spanish accent and everything, or whatever it was. He had that sort of Latin lover vibe.
And I think some people have alluded to this before, but a lot of these accents were almost like predetermined in the script before these characters were cast. Is that correct? Or
Sort of. Yeah, it was sort of decided, let's look for this type. I mean, but by the time I'd come on personally, like when I came on to Shaman King, a lot of that had already been established and decided, so I never really had much. It did allow for, when adapting the script, to go, oh, here's how this character would say this exact same thing versus how this character would say it, and that kind of, sort of to lean into the I always saw my job, and still do, if I'm ever working on that kind of thing, of like, got to try to be as specific as possible, because if you don't, you get that sort of translit sound where all dialogue sounds the same, and it doesn't pop necessarily, or just sound fun to listen to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and also I think especially with kids TV, you want kids to see themselves in it. And like, this was a show that was going to be overseas and was going to in this, there were Southern characters, and I mean, from what I understand, we were all just playing. Like, this was this was fun. We were not trying to insult anybody or make any grand statements about this British child, or it was a way to distinguish, 5 male characters that might all sound the same. Yeah. And we had more fun, and it was probably more fun to write. It was more fun for us to act. And we did not realize that we were causing an international incident sometimes. So that was not the intent.
It didn't do that. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely it, right? We were playing. We were having fun. We were just delighted to be set free on these things and doing what we were doing. And I mean, I always was trying to I was never comfortable with the idea of fully jettison, like the sense of jettisoning what it wants to be. It was more about just trying to bend it a little bit so that the dialogue crackles in a way that it would if you were sort of writing from the ground up.
Right, which must be frustrating for a writer coming out of a writing program where you had so much freedom, and then now you're restricted to these lip flaps.
So I now teach. I now full circle with
At
Charlie.
NYU, right?
But I teach like narrative game design courses with Gallatin, which is their interdisciplinary
So cool.
school. It's pretty high level stuff, and because I have students, because being an interdisciplinary school, it's not necessarily like Tisch where everyone is focused on. Students are coming from, some are game design people, some are story across media people, some are media studies people, there is the occasional it's my senior year and I had needed a credit. So this course about video games sounded fun, and then we go through the syllabus and I never see that person again because they realize, oh, this is like real academic work.
Yeah.
But where was I going with that? This is the part.
Oh, writing with the lip flap we were talking about.
When students are asking like what life advice, career advice, and it's like it's a tough industry. I don't know what to tell you. The only thing I can say is like keep a open mind as to the kind of work you would want to do, because the lip flap, I can say made me a better writer, because you have to, you can't just write what you want to write. You don't just have a blank page. You know what you need to say, but you need to say it in 3 syllables. There's a pause, 5 more quick syllables. The next person makes a face. The next person then realizes, reacting to the face, that they've got to say a thing that now is 2 more syllables. Like,
right. That discipline.
And you have to get in there, and it becomes untangling. I could sit there and write the same scene 10 different ways and try to figure out which is the way. And then you look at the whole thing and you want to make sure you're not repeating the same word too many times, I'd always try to read the script just as on paper, like without the video, to make sure that, does it just read? And I would realize,
we appreciate you doing that.
I would, to actors. Yeah. And I would realize, oh my gosh, I've started 3 sentences in a row with this, that. Come on.
That happens all the time. And again, unless you read it the way you're saying or read it out loud, you don't notice it, because it feels natural, like natural dialogue. So you're like, okay, this is very natural. But then it sounds repetitive to the ear when you hear it out loud.
Right. Or vice versa. If you want to intentionally do a threading of drop a word here and then you want the next character to pick up on that word and pull it into their sentence so that it sounds like there's a flow.
Right. And then there's a rhythm sometimes that you get into with it. But I would guess that because our languages are so different, Japanese to American, all of a sudden you're in a rhythm, and then it's like, oh wait, but that's not where we would pause. So how often would you ask for editing, like for the picture editing, to match what you really wanted to do?
A decent amount, once I got comfortable with doing so.
You're like, Jordan, help.
Yeah, Jordan. Jordan or Chris Guido. I would occasionally say, I give up. Can we please add 3 more flaps? I can't fit everything that needs to get in here in terms of exposition. Or the biggest cheat was if someone would talk and then it would end and then it would cut to something. It would be like, can we just cut this 4 frames earlier so that it can flow from on to off, and that way we can end it on the
right.
We have a little wiggle room in terms of pace. But
that's a luxury.
Yeah. You don't really do that anymore, for sure.
No, I think about that now, and I'm like, because when we're like struggling to fit things, because I still work in anime, and there's no rotoscope that we can call up and like, where's our rotoscoper? The biggest difference I see in the way that the 4Kids scripts looked and the way scripts look now is like there's a lot more detail. First of all, like things are underlined if they're off camera. Does that make your job harder as a writer? Like you're doing more stuff.
No, I liked that part. Doing the work with Bang Zoom was a lot like that. We would write in, you drop in a caret for a brief pause, or the dashes for different amounts of beats. Underline the parts that are off rather than saying off on. I think that's fine. Like, because I have a music background, and so I just kind of think of it as like,
that must help.
This is like orchestrating. You're just kind of like,
Yeah, and I think we can feel the difference in those scripts when someone hears the music of it or has a good sense of these characters. Like I would guess that, especially going into a show that's really established, like you went into Yu-Gi-Oh! and things like that, the speaking rhythms of those characters by that point. Whereas a new show, you're like learning their rhythms and the characters.
Yeah.
And at 4Kids, from what I heard, you guys didn't get a lot of episodes in advance, so you couldn't know a character arc. How many episodes would you see at a time usually?
I would say we generally had about and this has almost always been the case when any anime I've worked on, unless it was like we've got the whole season already, that I basically we'd know about 2 or 3 episodes out.
Okay.
And that's about it.
So you can't know that someone might be a bad guy in episode 10 if you're only seeing.
Right.
And maybe that's better in some ways because you're not projecting, but if you're supposed to be planting clues, it doesn't really help you.
Yeah, and then there was the thing where if you were trying to untangle a scene and just what was there wasn't working and you decide to, oh, I want to add a little character flavor to this, so I'm going to reference something off screen. My dad used to always tell me, and then later on we learned that this character hates their father. It's like, oops.
Right. Right.
Well, let's ignore that. Let's ignore that we took that little flavor detail.
What was the process in terms of like you would write a script? Would it then go right to the network before it was recorded, or would it go to the producers? Like, how many rewrites and stages would a script go through?
Yeah, so I would get a script, working with Alan, for instance. So with Alan or Jim, Alan and Jim were tended to be a pair a lot. And for them, I worked on Shaman King, Winx Club, and Mew Mew Power, or Tokyo Mew Mew, and Magical Do Re Mi. And that was so I would get a script, watch it, and then basically go in with kind of not an outline, but like we'd watch the video together and be like, what are you gonna have them do here? What's this scene about? And Alan would like to watch without a script, to just go, is this what they're talking about here? Like, what are they, is it? And I'd say, no, I'm thinking this, in the Japanese, they're doing this, but it's about divorce. And he'd go, no, no one gets divorced on Saturday morning, at least in 2000, at least in 2002.
Right.
I'm sure it's different now, but, yeah. And then you go, okay, great. Now go off and write the script, give it to him. Here's some notes, here's some feedback, here's some thoughts, adjust it, make an adjustment, and then that version would go to, I believe, to the client, to the the license holders, for review, as well as to the network, and then we would record it. Yeah, and then the network would review for S&P, standards and practices, right. And they would come back and say, don't, you're really implying that Shaman King had a lot of off-screen deaths. Well, I had on-screen deaths that we cut out and made it off-screen deaths, but even then they were like,
yeah,
we need to hear them going, oh, I'm very badly hurt and I will limp away now.
Do you remember there being an uncut DVD of Shaman King released? So few people remember.
I do.
I don't remember recording it. Okay, what do you remember?
I don't remember much about it.
Yeah.
I don't was it a rewrite? Was it a version that was the same actors but almost using the
same actors,
almost using a direct translation?
More of like a adaptation of like the Japanese script. And they did it for Shaman King and Yu-Gi-Oh! Not many DVD. I think 2 of each were released, and so there's not much of it out there, and so little information out there. I think you're one of the first people that
even remembers
remembers some of it. Yeah.
I remember it. I just don't remember anything about it. I don't remember I don't remember the details. I just remember it was a thing.
It's becoming one of our white whales in the show so far.
Yeah.
I just, because I'm just so curious about what went into that, and I think, not to throw Tara under the bus. Tara didn't even remember doing it.
I don't remember doing it.
So that goes to show, but I'm just like curious, like what the process went into there, but that's for another day.
You don't remember doing it at all?
No. It all feels like one big episode to me, to be honest. Like all the work I did at 4Kids.
So like did they bring you back in and re-record like the Anna lines?
Oh, I'm in it. Yeah.
Okay. But you don't remember.
I didn't even know I was in the Yu-Gi-Oh movie. Like I remember so little about, because again, it all felt like we would go in and just do a few lines and leave. I didn't feel as much of Shaman King. I felt more because I had a bigger role. But like, if I had a small role, like in Yu-Gi-Oh, I didn't know anything about the rest of the script, and sometimes they would give you information if it was really pertinent. But we were working really fast. You felt the pressure to work fast and not ask a million questions. So I don't remember. But what I did find was Al Khan talking about those uncut DVDs, and he said, that's for like the hardcore fans, and I guess they were responding to these message boards where people complained, and this was their way of maybe appeasing the Steves and the people who were on these boards chopping your head off. So I'm so sorry you had to see that. I have some questions from some people who are big Winx Club fans. I'm going to say that 10 times fast. You might not remember this stuff, but I told them I would ask some of these Winx questions, and you can just pass or make something up.
I will do my...
Now, were you at Winx from the beginning of that show?
Very beginning, yes.
Okay, so then were you in there for some of the decision-making processes? Like, a lot of names were changed in Winx. Something was called, and again, I don't know Winx well, so I apologize. The Vacuums. Baltar was changed from Voltor, I believe, and a lot of names and things like that. Is there anything you remember from those meetings about Winx?
I don't remember what drove name changes. If I had to guess, it might have if it was things like Voltor versus. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of them, some of them were legal.
Oh.
They were like, this is too close to, I'm totally hypo.
Yeah, but this is helpful to know.
This is too close to Voldemort. Like it's got too much of a, or whatever. I don't know.
Or whatever it was, not that specifically. But yes, there's names that in this country were used for something else or whatever it was. Like, we spoke to someone who was naming their Ultimate Muscle character, and they were doing all these extensive searches for names to make sure they weren't infringing on any license. So it might be just that simple. And people have been maybe looking for this secret hidden meaning for years when there really isn't such a deep explanation.
Yeah, sometimes it is. Yeah, a lot of it was that. I mean, I remember like in Shaman King, right? They would have these sort of homage teams because especially once they got to the bit where they left and they were on the journey across America to get to the tournament, and they would encounter this group and that group, and like one of the groups, like all the characters, they were like rockers, and all the characters were named after members of Black Sabbath. And I remember, I think it was Black Sabbath, but I remember we were like, can we? They just ran with that in Japan, but can we do that here?
I can't believe there was Black Sabbath humor happening in Japan.
I think ultimately we tweaked it. I find that like anime will make those sort of references all the time to.
Well, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a big anime that there's tons of musical references that I even don't get sometimes. So I'm impressed that people are getting those obscure references.
Like characters that are just straight up named after songs or bands or individuals.
Yeah.
Japan doesn't have to worry about that. But then when I think about the 4Kids stuff, I think probably the reason why a lot of these changes happen is because we're talking about licensing. They want to make toys and cards and all this stuff with these characters on it potentially. And there's so many hoops you got to go through to make sure that like a toy, the box that the toy comes in can say the name of that character there and no one gets pissed off.
Right.
So
it's interesting to hear like people asking about Winx name changes, because at least in my memory, the names were pretty. We kept most of them, I thought, but maybe not. I don't know.
Well, also like with some of those shows, like the obviously 4Kids made a very clear decision to target more female audience. So with like Winx Club and Mew Mew and Magical Do Re Mi, was there a different writing approach for the girls' television? Or was there an attempt to make it more universal to everybody? Or was it pretty much status quo, like the same as writing for anything else?
Say it was like status quo, but you've already got so much of a lot of the heavy lifting is done for you. The visuals are there, the stories are there. So that part is kind of in place. It's really just about writing updating, like changing the dialogue. So I wouldn't say that in that sense, I think it was just sort of business as usual.
Okay.
if anything, I would just say I personally would try to not like go, oh, this is for girls, therefore I'm gonna like sprinkle in all sorts of
Right,
I
right.
don't know even what to call it.
Stereotypical
Yeah,
stuff like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
I'm going to try to avoid making jokes about like hair and nails and that kind of thing.
Right.
Because like just let them be awesome. Like just write it. Like there's no re I never thought of a strong reason to think of it as a different. Um, because I felt like that work was done already so much through the visuals and just the overall stories themselves.
Were those any easier since you were not, talking about the things like you weren't probably having to make the same kind of cuts that you did in the other shows with the death and the, like all that, the blood and the gore.
Sometimes, but sometimes it was like I remember there was a divorce storyline in Do Re Mi where like the father his I don't remember the details, but
Right.
I think one of the girls their parents were divorced, and it was a thing, and we just sort of were like, Dad's always away on business, instead. Like,
Okay.
and there
Yeah.
was a whole episode around dealing with that, and like I don't remember if it was like the actual decision or whatever it was, but I remember that one being challenging.
Yeah, the rules were so interesting back then. I mean, there was a whole episode of Kirby that was controversial because he goes to the dentist and they didn't want to like scare kids off of going to the dentist. Like things that today I feel like would be embraced were not then.
Does Kirby have teeth?
I can't remember if
I can't
it was
picture.
him. I mean, that's a very good. I think it might have been a different character, but it was definitely a storyline that was controversial for some reason. But yeah, I would think that working in because you do still work in the children's industry, don't you? Do I have that correct? Educational, I thought.
Yeah, but it's adult.
Okay.
I worked. If we want to bore people for a second, my evolution went from the anime work and 4Kids especially, and then doing Bang Zoom as well. So I was juggling all of it, and then because we had also gotten tapped to help out with some of the game scripts for Shaman King, and I was a game person, gamer. I don't like gamer. I don't know why. I was a game person, and more, right? In the early 2000s, there was this feeling of like, oh, people, like stories and games are starting to be a real thing. It's starting to get taken just a little more seriously, and the production values are better, and the commitment to merging gameplay and narrative is stronger and stronger, and so I got interested in that, and through contacts and knocking around, ended up at Gameloft, a mobile game development company for quite a while,
Cool.
for about 8 years, 9 years, and ended up by the time I left, I was the narrative director, so working with a lot of the narrative and writing teams. Or we had like 15 studios around the world at this time, like all over the place,
Wow.
and then left from there to go to a place called Cognito that developed interactive sort of game-based simulations to help. Basically, in a nutshell, their motto was conversations that change lives. And the idea was we would partner with various organizations, SAMHSA, UNICEF, the CDC, and sort of develop didactic content that teaches frameworks for like how to talk to a loved one about something, an addiction problem or something, or for doctors and physicians. And then they would have they'd be presented with a branching interactive scenario that they could practice applying that framework in a virtual scenario. We then got acquired by Ascend Learning, it's a bigger learning company, and so we're now part of that bigger family, creating learning products and simulations for like allied health professionals, nurses, fitness trainers. It's all over the place.
So it's an educational market, which is an interesting jump from what you were doing, because there had to be some educational content. Like what we've learned is these shows had to have something educational in them for at least a few minutes for them to go. So now you're kind of coming full circle.
Yeah.
I'd love to just talk a little bit about your time at the video game company.
Sure.
Coming from 4Kids, where again it was so kid focused, was there more freedom to write what you wanted in video games?
We also worked with a lot of licensors. So we worked with Marvel and Disney and WB. In fact, I joked because one of our studios was working on a Harry Potter game, a mobile game, and they my job was kind of be the liaison, the license between WB's licensing team and our team, like in terms of the story and how we were framing everything. In terms of the gameplay, they had like the kids running around just killing people with the wands and just zapping, and we're like, we know you can't. That's a liberty. It was the opposite. It was like, oh, this is the 4Kids, like, you can't take that much liberty with this license.
You were free to kill as many puppies as you wanted, finally.
But we couldn't. But we could not
I know,
because
yeah.
No,
man.
so it was a lot of, and it was mobile gaming, so it was very restrictive in terms of how much narrative you want to put in there because smaller play sessions and that kind of thing.
Very cool. Well, and I know there is a top secret project that you're working on that we cannot talk about now, but hopefully by the time this comes out, we will be able to talk about it. Let's just say things are coming around a little bit more full circle these days, and I'm happy that with the secret information that I do have. But thank you so much for talking to us.
Of course.
And sharing your insights.
Of course. Thanks for having. It's a fun thing. It's fun to reminisce on it.
Yeah, and also I'm glad we touched a little bit on like the office culture and how young everybody was there. Like we think about that now, like these shows that were watched by a gazillion people were written by a bunch of 20-somethings and dubbed by it's, and the one thing I always want to say, and I forget sometimes at the end of these episodes, is that I go to these conventions, these fan conventions, and I get to meet the people who grew up watching the words that you wrote, and they often thank me. Sometimes they yell at me, but they usually thank me. And they say, thank you for my childhood. Thank you, And I'm always like, I wish you could say that to the person who actually was taking the time to stop and rewind that VHS tape. So just so you know, you touched a lot of people with your work, and I want to make sure you know that.
That's very nice to hear. We did get to where we had digital files after a while. So.
Oh, thank God. And on that note, we will end this interview. But thank you again, Barton.
Thank you, Tara. And Steve.
And that was Barton Bishop. So nice guy and great name, Barton Bishop.
Kind of love that alliteration.
I do love alliteration. You know what? My biggest mistake was not asking what his middle name was, because I hope it starts with a B.
I think, I think it's best to leave that up to the imagination. And what? Barton Bishop, like Barton,
Blake,
Barney,
Bernard. I'd like
Blaine.
to think it's a B name, Blaine. Well, Barton, if you hear this, please, please tell us what your middle name is. No, that was really cool. I love all these people who came out of NYU, that dramatic writing program. I think he's the third person we've spoken to.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
I can't remember who else we were talking to who said like they were starting to work with 4Kids before they had even graduated.
I believe that was Matthew Durdick.
Yeah.
And also Jason Bergenfeld, who was at Taj, went through that dramatic writing program. Like it's a very New York-y company in that way. Lots of those NYUers.
But yeah, it's been quite a reveal. Like finding out, like, oh yeah, like everyone's college age, and when I think about it, it's like, not too. I think like in the later years too, I'm like, oh, that's not too far off. Like it's like I'm younger, but I'm not that much younger.
Right. You were. I even when I said to Norman during his interview, like, gosh, I didn't realize how young you were to be in charge of such a big company. And even like the stuff I was doing, I'm like, wow, I peaked really young. I worked on these big shows very young. I'll never work on anything bigger than that. But it's kind of crazy stuff because then you think that's going to be the norm. You think, oh, I'm always going to work on high profile things. So I'm sure for that whole studio of young 20-somethings, they thought this was, only going to get bigger and better. And I think for some people it did.
I will say, working in in the animation industry, I never get comfortable. I don't believe that there's any guarantees in this industry. So,
well, you're smart. I mean, I think that's a generational thing as well. Like that's how I feel. I feel like I have to hustle every day.
I mean, I still feel like it got to. There was like a point, not too far off, fairly recently, where it's like I'd get a job, I'd already be thinking about what am I going to do for my next job.
Oh, yeah. It's not fun. People who are like, your job's so awesome. And I'm like, I say when I'm working, it's awesome. But it's the in-betweens that are not for everybody. And certainly not for people who like stability. Whew. Yeah.
Yeah.
On that note, thank you for listening to our depressing outro of our podcast.
I wouldn't say it's depressing. I think it's more like
it's realism.
Stay humble, and and always be prepared. Don't be a ball of anxiety, but just always know that there's no guarantees.
Yeah.
And
that's why, the Amy Birnbaum interview was fun for me because she was a great example of someone living a creative life and doing lots of different jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a cliche, this whole entitlement, generational, blah, blah, blah. But there is that. I have spoken to people who are, angry they're not making a living. And I just didn't expect anything. I don't expect anyone to hire me. I expect to have to audition for everything.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. Don't get too comfortable. It's a good motto. That's what we're going to sell merch that just says, don't get too comfortable.
People would think that's like a commentary on 4Kids itself.
Yeah, don't get too maybe that's going to be our next t-shirt. Yeah, we do need more meme-worthy merch.
Yeah.
You said that recently.
So.
Like we should find some funny lines from these episodes, and
I think we got to capitalize on like jelly donuts. I think
jelly donuts. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I have some ideas.
Okay, we're gonna brainstorm off the air. But thank you guys for listening. If you want to listen to episodes early, ad-free, you go to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. Thank you for our existing Patreon supporters. You are loved. The rest of you are not. No, I'm just kidding. The rest of you who are listening for free, we love too. You can, how do they do that?
Simply just go to our website, 4kidsflashback.com. Number 4. Don't ever forget it.
Yeah. There's links to all of the places you can listen. And speaking of merch, Steve's logo is on a bunch of merch. If you click the shop link on 4Kids Flashback, you can buy it and be a proud watcher of 4Kids, if that's your thing. I'm trying to think. I did think of something else the other day. Let me think if I can remember. Oh, yeah. I was thinking we could do like a shirt that says like raised by 4Kids. Or like something like that, or raised on 4Kids.
Yeah, we can think of something like that. Yeah, it's a phrase I do see a lot of people respond with sometimes. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, every now and then, someone replies like, "Oh, I was raised on this." So.
Yeah, 4Kids was my babysitter, something like that. All right, guys, if you have ideas, let us know, and I'll make Steve draw it because I certainly can't. All right, thank you guys for listening, and
we'll catch you next time.
What he said. 4Kids Flashback is a production of Maji Media, hosted by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko.
Producers are Zach Logan, Tara Sands, and Steve Yurko.
For more information, go to 4kidsflashback.com. That is the number 4. And if you worked at 4Kids and have a story you want to share, please email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com.
You can find us on social media at 4Kids Flashback, and to listen early and ad-free, head to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. And for podcast merchandise, find links on our website and Linktree.
As they say on every podcast, if you liked this show, please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell your friends, or 4. If you want to check out other Maji Media podcasts, go to maji.media. Thanks for listening.